Hi, everybody. My name is Eric with Smart Pot Fabric Planters, and welcome to the Growing Revolution. We've got a great episode where we're going to be talking all things Smart Pot with our president, Kurt Reiger. Kurt, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Eric, and thank you for hosting the Smart Podcast and educating people.
Well,
it's a great series.
This is meant to be entertaining, informational, and hopefully inspirational. So let's get into this.
Hopefully I can be all three.
I know you will.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your background pre-High Caliper Growing. And in case you aren't familiar, High Caliper Growing is the parent company of the Smart Pot planter. What were you doing before Smart Pots?
I worked in New York City with Merrill Lynch for a while, and then before that had gone to college and graduated from Vanderbilt University in Nashville, and then also have an MBA degree from University of Pennsylvania, Wharton.
Okay, I didn't know you were a Commodore.
Every football season we come out. No, that's a joke. But anyway, yeah. But I did not study horticulture or anything, like that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and my father had a tree farm. He had also worked at Merrill Lynch, and he did an early retirement and started growing trees. Pretty quickly figured out, well, anybody can grow trees, but you can't move them around. The key to successful nursery business is not just growing the tree, but being able to harvest it and deliver it in good condition. And harvesting trees and delivering them is quite a challenge. So he started experimenting with fabrics and how he could contain the root structure of the fabric so that he could move the plant around. And started working with fabrics, hoping that a fabric would allow water to pass through but would hold all the roots in. So, because it takes 2, 3, 4 years to grow the tree. It's growing maples, oaks, So the water would pass through, yet the roots would stay contained, and you could easily then pick it up and move that. He started making containers in 1980, so a long, long time ago. And he harvested the first trees in 1982. So they sat out there for 2 years, and they were a bunch of maples and oaks and various species, river birch, stuff like that. 2 years later, 1982, they started to harvest, and the first thing they noticed was that roots were just pouring through the fabric. They were all over the place. And this is all in the ground, nothing above, just in the ground, trees growing in the ground, roots pouring all over the place. But they dug pretty easily in the fabric container. And the more they started to look at the roots, they realized, well, these aren't regular, normal roots. These are roots that had actually been pruned, and they were fibrous roots and feeder roots, and they came off very easily. And then when they took the fabric off, they realized that they had pruned the root structure of the plant and forced that root structure to fiber and fill. And it actually had built a healthier root structure on the plant because of the fabric.
Mm-hmm.
So it took another 2 years then for them to figure out, well, this could be a saleable product. This might be a product that other nurseries, other tree growers might want. So we incorporated in 1984, and I was in New York at that time. And then in 1985, I thought, well, one of these days I'd like to run my own business. That'd be cool. Like to be an entrepreneur, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, before I knew any better. Anyway, so I came back and started to run the company. And at that time, my dad operated the company out of the basement of his house. So the first thing I did when I came back, we went and I got an office, a one-room office. Because I wasn't going to go over to mom and dad's house, after going to college and graduate school. Oh, I'm working out of dad's basement, going over to mom, and I couldn't do that. So we got an office and started working. And some of the customers that we got in 1984, we still work with today.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of amazing, and it's great to still be in touch with some of these nurseries, tree growers, some of the best tree growers, plant growers in the country, plantsmen in the country, to have had a company that has a continuous history with some of the greatest plant growers in the country. It is that I'm very proud of that, and that's and that's nice. At first, we did not make the product here, and at that time we called it the root control bag, by the way. So our company was Root Control Inc. It was a root control bag, and it was very controversial. We had a lot of product quality issues. The bag was not nearly as good as it.
Because before the bag, for people who aren't familiar with tree farming, basically when you harvested the tree out of the ground, you would need a pronged
tree spade.
Tree spade to dig that out. You need a skilled operator to run that.
A tree spade is an expensive piece of equipment, and you need a skilled operator to run a tree spade. It's an expensive piece of equipment. You don't want somebody who you just hired out there turning on the tree spade. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
You're going to get somebody seriously hurt. And then after you dig the spade, that's a great big ball. You've got to know how to cinch that ball together, wire it together, burlap it together, and fasten it correctly so that you can move it around, which means you're going to need some pretty serious equipment to do that, an operator and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that big root ball, you're not able to pack nearly as many trees onto a truck as you would in a nice small root ball
right.
the
so
root control
those
bag.
were all the arguments that we made at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the origins are in the tree farming industry. How did the retail product SmartPot come about?
It took a long time. We were 15 years. So from about 1984, 85 until about the year 2000, we only had the root control bag, which was only an in-ground bag for tree growing. And we didn't think that it would work, but we never really thought about it above ground. But then over those years, there would be customers, just inevitable. They would grow trees in the ground, they'd harvest them, but then something would happen and the load wouldn't get picked up, or they would still be there, and somebody would order these maple trees, and then the next thing you know, it's a year later and they're still sitting out there. Well, they were still doing pretty well. And then it might be 2 years later, and some of those oak trees, they're still doing okay. And if you threw some fertilizer on them, they'd perk up and
the roots haven't gone circling like they would in a plastic nursery pot.
That's exactly right. They didn't go circling like they would in a plastic nursery pot, nor did the ball fall apart as it would if you had dug that ball B&B and had it sitting in the lot for a year or two. It'd just kind of start to rot and fall apart. Well, those things didn't happen, but we're kind of slow on the uptake here. So it took us 15 years to notice, those are still doing okay. Yeah. And then we had a particular customer down in the Tampa, Florida area, Sun City, who called us up and said he wanted to try some above ground. And he'd kind of gone through, this is a long-term customer, he's kind of gone through some of this process, but he wanted it made slightly different and a heavier bottom, and he had some. So I didn't think it would work. But, if he wants to do this,
the customer's always right.
The customer's always right. So sure, we'll make, we made him a few hundred and sent it to him. And then almost immediately, meaning a month or two later, he called up and said, I think this is really going to work. Make me another 500. So, sure, we can do that. I still didn't think it would work because, it's above ground, it's a fabric, it's going to dry out, it's going to blow away. And when I asked him about that, his response was, well, he let me worry about that. If it's going to dry out, well, I've got a whole system here to irrigate. Don't worry about that. It's going to blow. Look, I've got a whole stake and go. We've got you covered here. So he started doing that. And then a year later, he started doing it in a much bigger way, meaning, quite a few thousand.
And he was growing trees?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Maples, oaks, citrus, actually. Did a lot of citrus. And he's a commercial tree grower. And those guys are still commercial tree growers today. So they're large commercial farm.
Nice. So yeah, you just it's a kind of an accidental evolution, learning about the product and what it can do.
It is accidental and an evolution. However, we knew a fair amount. When he grew the trees out there and the roots branched and pruned, we already knew that, oh yeah, they're going to branch. And well, look, they're doing that above ground as well as that. Well, it's air root pruning as opposed to pruning by the fabric, but we knew all about root pruning and root enhancement. So it was an easy step for us to look at it and say, oh, those maple trees are root enhancing. This oak tree has a much better root structure because it is air pruning as opposed to in-ground pruning. But root pruning is root pruning, and we had been preaching root pruning for 15 years. So we recognized that very quickly.
Nice.
That this was working.
Nice. Now, the product was called the root control bag.
Yeah, which is a terrible name.
Before it became the Smart Pot. Now, can you tell us how the Smart Pot name came about? That's kind of a cool story.
Well, it was the same customers.
Oh, okay, same guy.
By this time we're making 10,000. He was putting out 10 or 20, had 10 or 20 or 30,000 bags. It was fair sized farm. All above ground in these root control bags. So that was the above ground root control bag. So we called it, of course, the above ground root control bag. That's logical. So we had banners and posters made up the above ground root control bag. And I went to a trade show somewhere. I can't remember. I want to say like Philadelphia or somewhere. And it was just painful to, the above ground root control. It was just
very industrial.
And this was a show that had a number of garden writers, had a real kind of retail orientation. And, I came away from that show thinking, this just doesn't work. This above ground, it's just terrible, because
it doesn't roll off the tongue.
Well, we had always worked for 15 years. We'd worked in the nursery, the industrial side. We never dealt with the public.
And farmers are very straightforward people. To the point.
Say we're controlling roots with this bag, and we're trying to control roots, and you're only talking to the farmers, and not just farmers, but nursery people who are just growing oak trees. It's a fairly limited audience. You can call it whatever. Well, we realized that we needed a name. So I called up the guy, our customer in Tampa, in Sun City, and said, hey, this above ground root control bag is just terrible. It's not working in any way. And you've got 30,000 of these out. We got to have a name. What are we going to call it? And he says he's a French guy originally from Morocco, and so he has a pretty strong accent. And he goes, "Yes, the name is not so good. I call you tomorrow." So I, well, I'll be darned. The next day the phone rang. It was him. And he said, you should call it the Smart Pot, because when I use it, I think I am smart. It distributes the water evenly for me, and it root prunes, and I can be sitting in my office, but my trees are root pruning and building a better root structure. So when I use it, I am smart, so call it the Smart Pot. And this was, of course, before all the world got smart stuff. There was a smart car, but that's about it. There certainly were no smartphones. There were, everything else now was smart. Well, so this, as far as I can tell, this was the second smart item out there, other than the punky little European smart car.
Yep, sounds like it.
At the time, though, I thought, gosh, that sounds like a great name, but could it be so great, or am I just so? I had about 10 other names. And I wrote them all down and put the Smart Pot in at about 4th or something, and passed them around to, the people, a few people here, and everybody, of course, all the Smart Pots. That's the name. That's the name that we, and I actually still have. I was going to show you. This is our price list from This one is from 2000. Price is effective December 17th, 2000. From our old address and old root control. So
prices have gone up a little bit.
Well,
then.
not that much actually, not that much. And the pricing here, you got to remember this. We only dealt with wholesale nurseries, so these were wholesale prices, and there was no such thing as retail.
Yeah, and they're buying thousands and thousands at a time versus onesie twosies.
The guy in Tampa is buying 10,000 at a time.
Yep.
So you like it when the phone rings and he needs to order. That's nice.
Yeah, definitely. So smart pots are very popular for growers of all types of plants, but especially popular in the cannabis industry. How did that all come about?
Well, once we realized it was above ground, we started, to pitch to anybody who might be interested in growing. The first entity that actually started to do this in a larger way was a company called Gardner Supply in Vermont, who's still a customer of ours today. We contract manufacture a lot of Gardner Supply's products, and they wanted to grow potatoes, just a potato bag. And I thought, well, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Why would you just make a bag just for potatoes when you could grow anything? You grow a maple tree. Why limit it to potatoes? And of course, they were on the complete other page saying, listen, we're just telling our customers to grow potatoes, and only for our customers to grow potatoes, and it worked really, really, really well. And of course, they're the smart ones, and I was not, because when you tell people to grow something unique, they actually understand and they get into it, and they pretty quickly figured out, I can grow potatoes, I could also grow garlic, could grow onions, I could grow all kinds of things. And, so they were ahead of us. So we started to realize, well, more people will be growing other things. And by that time, we had a lot of customers in Oregon. Washington, Oregon were big areas for us. So we started to have customers in Oregon who started to put cannabis in, and we started to hear back that it was doing really, really well, and had more and more interest, but still didn't really have much of a clue. And then we went to we're members of the Northern California Nursery Association, have some customers in Northern California. So I went to a show, Northern California trade show in San Mateo, California, at the famous fairgrounds there in San Mateo. And so I called up, Dustin Frazier, who had already contacted us because he had seen us in ads with the Northern California Nursery Association. We were members. And so he was already, looking at our product and working with our product. And, initially we sent him all stuff for the root control bag. And then a couple of weeks later, I realized, he's trying to sell to like retail type people. So I called him up and I said, look, we got this other thing. It's called the Smart Pot. It's for retail. You're calling on retail stores, aren't you? Well, yeah, I am, Well, let me send you all the Smart Pot stuff. So then like a month later, I called him up and I said, look, we're doing this trade show in San Mateo. It's a nursery association show, but, and he immediately goes, hey, I'll work the booth with you. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know that I need any help but okay, okay, sure, come on down. So he comes down, and the first, I may have told you this, I guess I haven't shared it with the world here, but the show opens up, and one of the first people that comes by, it's a nursery in Northern California. I didn't know who they were. So I'm, giving them the spiel, talking about root pruning and root enhancement and water distribution and how it works really well. Well, Dustin's standing back, and finally he just can't contain himself anymore. So he jumps in front of me and starts giving these people the spiel. And, I kind of know about the product, and I'm thinking, who is this guy, jumping? So he starts asking them other questions and saying other things. Well, within about 45 seconds with his spiel, I've been talking for, quite a few minutes and not really getting anywhere. With his spiel, after 45 seconds, the guy literally says, well, that sounds good. Now, can I place an order right here? And so it's like he turns to me and goes, Kurt, get the order pads. This gentleman wants to place an order. I'm going, order pads? We don't bring an order pad to this crummy show. We'd never take an order here. This is just to see and be seen. So anyway, and of course the difference was that his pitch was completely to a grow store, which could be called a nursery, and in fact would be called a nursery in Northern California. There are a large number of nursery or garden and supply stores in Northern California. Spare time. I mean, just you name them all. There's a whole bunch.
Yep.
And this is a retail product for them.
Yeah.
That was specifically for cannabis, but we didn't really fully understand that the whole market there. But it was from that show, from that point, that we really started to
focus on cannabis.
Focus on grow stores.
Yeah.
Focus on specialty growing. Focus on the industry, particularly in Northern California. We pretty quickly got picked up by what at the time was NGW, Sunlight Supply,
and now
as
Hawthorne,
a distributor, which is now Hawthorne. As a product, they wanted the Smart Pot, and of course it was called the Smart Pot. So of course then when we started to sell into Northern California, we already had the Smart Pot. We'd been the Smart Pot for 5 or 6 years before we kind of put it. Oh, it's Smart Pot. Oh, there's a little entendre there. Well, we didn't know that. A little innuendo. We were working by innuendo without knowing it for quite a few years. Just to let you know that we're kind of rubes and slow around here.
What's funny is like whenever I'm wearing like a Smart Pot shirt or hat, half the time an older lady has asked me about it. They think it's cannabis. No, it's actually a container. Yeah. You can grow cannabis in it.
It is interesting when you wear Smart Pot stuff out. I've been in restaurants where I have Smart Pot stuff on, and the waiter comes up and goes, "Oh, you know about Smart Pots?" Yeah. Do you know about Smart Pots? And the guy, "Yeah, I know about Smart Pots." Well, what do you know about Smart Pots? It's like he'll launch into the spiel. It's like, you ought to come work for us, buddy. It's always it's fun to recognize or have people recognize it and actually know about a Smart Pot and what a Smart Pot can do and what kind of a product it is.
Smart Pots are
pictures of what they're growing. They want you, look at my tomatoes. Look, we grew these cucumbers. Look at this.
Yeah, Smart Pot it's a household name now. It's like Kleenex. Every tissue you blow your nose with is a Kleenex, and every fabric pot is a Smart Pot.
Well, that's true.
You blaze the trail.
And like Kleenex, we try to keep a trademark. It is a trademark, registered trademark. Smart Pot is a registered trademark name. And we work very hard to make sure that it doesn't become a ubiquitous brand that has no meaning. It is a trademark.
Yep.
And it a Smart Pot is only made by us.
Yep.
And it actually turns out that Smart Pot is far and away the highest quality container on the market, and we work very hard and very diligently to keep it that way.
That's right.
And so it takes a lot of daily work to, keep that brand out there and to make sure that brand means something to people. It's like Coke or Pepsi. When you get a Coke or Pepsi, you know what you're going to get. You get a Smart Pot, you know what you're going to get.
Yep. Quality, consistency.
Yes. Because we've invented a new SKU, a new category of fabric containers. Before us, there were no fabric containers. We invented the concept and the idea of fabric containers.
Yep.
Well, you want to make sure that your first use of fabric containers is very positive, and that's why it's important to use a Smart Pot, because a lot of our knockoffs they're fabric, but they're not the right fabrics, and they don't root prune, and they don't add to the porosity and the aeration of the soils, so they don't work very well, or they don't work at all.
Yeah.
And then after a month or two, they fall apart.
Yep.
Well, that's a fabric container, but it's not a Smart Pot.
Yeah. Yeah, and an inferior experience can leave people with a bad taste in their mouth.
And we have stores. A lot of times we'll talk to the store. Oh, can you carry the Smart Pot? Well, we tried some fabric containers and our customers didn't like them. Well, look, you didn't have a Smart Pot in there. You had a cheap knockoff made who knows where, and of course your customers didn't like it. If you were a grocery store and you're selling, diet cream soda with sugar, would your customers like that? No, your customers want a good brand of your product.
Yep.
They don't want the knockoff. You've started them out with a knockoff.
Right.
Not just a knockoff, but the sorry stuff. And then you say, well, our customers don't like that. Well, no. You give them the right product and they'll have a great experience.
Yep. So black was the original color, kind of like the Ford Model T, and then eventually tan came out. Who had the idea of coming out with tan fabric for Smart Pots?
That was a demand. Black was our original fabric, and black holds UV, and there are a number of reasons why black, works really well.
Mm-hmm.
We were asked by a number of growers in Northern California for a tan product that might blend in more, kind of, be camo type of deal. So we developed the tan for that.
Okay.
And it
was more for blending into the environment versus less heat absorption.
The heat absorption, and people focus on heat absorption because black containers, black plastic holds in heat and attracts heat, and white repels it and everything. But in a fabric, it's not that imperative because that's the reason, like I've got a white knit, you have a black shirt on. Well, if we go out in the sun, it breathes, it's porous. There are slight differences, and you can tell, but those differences are not that great. Some football team that's wearing a white jersey versus a black jersey, it's porous, it breathes. The Smart Pot is a porous, breathable fabric, so your temperature is going to be pretty much the same whether you're in a tan or a black. Now, we have a lot of customers who say, oh, the tan or oh, the green will do, but when we actually get a thermometer, a temperature gauge in there and try to measure the differences, they are very, very minimal. The important point is you have a fabric that is breathable, a breathable fabric. That's what makes all the difference in the world.
Yep.
So that's what you're looking for, regardless of the color. You need porosity and breathability to give you the aeration to allow that root structure to really work, and for the pot to really be smart.
Nice.